Welcome to Gunners R Us podcast, where we are positively Patreon. Here on the Patreon, we are doing a review of the North London Derby, and you can tell by my voice, it's a very good morning on this Monday. We spoke on the Patreon last week about, in the preview for this, that we thought maybe it could be a tight game. I think I predicted 3-1, which it ended up kind of being close, but it's not in the story of the whole game, because we're going to break that down today. I kind of had it as a close game and maybe a 2-1 win, and then maybe a little cherry on the top right at the end of the game to seal it. But it wasn't. It was nothing like that in the end. It was a very strange one. I went in more nervous than I've been nervous for a game in a very, very long time. Maybe since I probably added maybe the Champions League semi-final last year. But before that, I think it's been years since I've been that kind of unnerved. I think it was added because Liverpool dropped points, City dropped points. It was a great opportunity for Tottenham to maybe derail our title charge a tiny bit, which would have really hurt. And also that's added incentive for them, the fans, everything like that. Whereas for us, it was added incentive that could also be construed as pressure to have to win this game. And I kind of saw it the opposite way. I kind of saw it as not a free hit, because I don't think you can ever afford to lose a home derby like that. But because everyone had lost, there was a little buffer of 3 points that, if the worst case scenario happened, we're still top. We're still 3 points clear. And you could kind of just go, let's just play it how we want to play it. And I don't actually know. It's such a hard game to break down, because I really felt like Tottenham turned up with a game plan which I'm not against. I saw a lot of people, kind of Arsenal fans, being annoyed that they're doing a low block. But I mean, if I was an opposition manager against Arsenal, the first thing I would do is a low block, because unlike Arne Slot, who complains directly about what he doesn't want teams to do, if you just watch enough Arsenal games, you'll realise they really struggle to break down a low block. And their one kryptonite, as far as defensively, is counterattacks. Because when you look at open play goals this season that we've conceded, maybe the Voltemada one was just a nice cross. Started as a counterattack, but we got men behind the ball, but we still couldn't stop it. Whereas the Haaland one at home to Man City, the 1-1 draw at the Emirates, that was a counterattack, almost a one-man counterattack with Haaland, and I think it was Reinders. I think might have slipped him through. I can't remember exactly. But that was a very tough kind of goal to concede. And then everything else has been essentially set pieces, like the Sunderland goals and things like that. We still only can have conceded in the league. And I think we've conceded 6 in 12 now, which isn't as impressive as I think it was 3 in 10. We've conceded 3 goals in the last 2 games. This goal was also a bit of an oddity. The other, Szoboszlai free kick this season was a bit of an oddity. I think this one's a bit of an oddity. So it is good when you look at it directly like that, because I think the way in which we are conceding is manageable throughout a whole season, because we're not allowing many chances. I think the only shot they had on target, I'll double check this in a moment, was the Richarlison goal. So generally across the board, I think the way in which they prepared for the game was probably not the worst. I think in hindsight it's the worst. I think it just looks so much worse when it doesn't work. If it did work, I think people say it's genius. I think if it doesn't work, Tottenham fans will want them to have gone for it. And I kind of liken Tottenham before the game to Arsenal under Emery. I don't know if you remember, we went at that 24-game unbeaten run, and if you asked any Arsenal fan, we all kind of went, we're not very good though. I get it, we're 24 games unbeaten, but it's not good. There's something wrong with it. And eventually it did. It went kind of to pot, basically, after that 24-game run. Because in that time, we knew we were conceding too many chances. The football wasn't good. It was horseshoe football. It was defensive first. So, for example, when the holding midfielders picked the ball up, their first thought was, let's get out to the right back or back to the centre back, all the way back to the goalie. They never once thought, let's just turn on the ball and try and look for a pass forward. And I think as an Arsenal fan, we knew that eventually it was all going to come to light, and one team was going to just score, whereas before, I think defensively, we looked all right that season as far as stats, but we knew we were kind of riding our luck. And I think Tottenham are very similar. I think this season they're not doing the worst. I mean, in the league and Champions League, their position looks fine. But if you ask the Tottenham fans or saw any kind of media around Tottenham, they were very much not enjoying it. They're saying that we don't like this. And the fan base, in all fairness, they turned on Ange at the end, but they stuck with him because they just liked how aggressive it was. So it was an odd appointment because Frank is more defensive minded, but I didn't think he was this defensive minded because at Brentford he wasn't quite like this. But managing a team like Brentford, no obviously diss on Brentford compared to managing Tottenham is a whole different set of kind of rules, in which you can manage that is acceptable to that fan base and that kind of thing. And how many games, at Brentford, if you win 50% of your games, you're doing extremely well. I think at Tottenham, if you're not winning 70%, I think the fan base might get on top of you. So it was just, I think everything kind of came to be in one moment. So I think the only way to do this is to kind of tackle this from the get-go. We'll start with the day of the game, the team news, the stories around that, the stories around the Tifu. We've got the game plan generally, the players that did come back, the players that didn't come back, the goals themselves. Had some media surrounding some of Arsenal stuff that I think maybe we're hitting a point where the worms turned. I think that phrase is right, but I think the worms turned a little bit as far as who we are in the media's eyes, and I think it's leaving a bit of a bad taste in some people's mouths that they're gonna maybe have to accept. Yeah, they're actually all right. They're quite good, and that isn't. We don't have to banter that because it's hard to banter that when they're winning, if you know what I mean. And I think with that come so many other things that are positive for us, which is decisions, breaks in play. Just the noise surrounding the club. The less noise around the club, the better for the team to just crack on. When every single weekend, we joked at the start of the season, Chelsea could lose 6 in a row and Sky Sports News would do a piece on Gyökeres for 2 hours with Danny Ings or someone. It wasn't Danny Ings, it was Charlie Austin. But it was just kind of confusing. And again, this weekend, you could almost see the remnants of this lingering stink about trying to make a point of it, which I've had this issue with the whole time with Arteta, that they hate the way Arteta does things, but he is no different to exactly how Klopp did everything, and he was absolute media darling at Liverpool. And I mean, if anything, he took it further. Klopp, he went onto the field, he did all these things, he was never in his technical box, he was screaming at fourth officials to a point where we've seen the actual officials talk in candid videos to get themselves fired, how much they disliked him. And I think with Arteta, they try to make a point. I think in that game yesterday, there was a moment where I think he sarcastically clapped a free kick, or he was clapping the team because of the way in which they got behind the ball from the counter-attack. Either way, naturally, the commentators are going to think, is it him clapping the team, which he does consistently throughout a game when they kind of rally, or is he clapping the ref sarcastically? Then they go down, they show him on camera for maybe a minute. They talk about how he's been out, he's hardly been in his technical box, all these things. And they start to make a thing of it. And then meanwhile, you go back 24 hours and, Pep Guardiola's punching seats. He grabbed a camera. He shoved a camera. He went and shouted at the refs. No one talks about it. And you just think, and I think with the worm turning, I think that is what we're kind of going towards is once you start to win things, people don't talk about it. And that's where we're at. I think before, we were try-hards, we were doing all these things, we were cringe, all these things that people say. But when you're not winning things, it's easy for them to keep just going with it. And it does good hits on media, shorts on YouTube, even Sky Sports ratings. It's better when you're talking about Arsenal and things that are going wrong, or just, I wouldn't say theories, but ideas around Arsenal. And that conversation's better because they know they're going to get a reaction from the fan base, i.e. me on a podcast, on a Patreon, talking about it right now. But when that turns, you then, if he goes and wins that league, or he wins the Champions League, they start talking about him as one of the best managers. And therefore, they probably don't bring up the fact he's not in his technical area. Because guess what? Tonight is Everton versus Man United. Watch the technical areas. Sean Dyche, I'm sure, will end up staying in his technical area. I say Sean Dyche, he's not the manager of Everton. When you watch it, you'll go, oh, okay, that is... Amarin's out, but they won't bring light to it. He'll run and collect the ball that's gone out. He'll run down the touchline for a goal slightly out of his box, but they will not bring light to it. And that is the thing that is the most frustrating about the whole thing, is that kind of constant talk definitely impacts the play. And I just feel like this week we've seen some bits start to turn. So, starting off with the team news, I think it was probably the most anticipated team news we've experienced so far this season, especially potentially for seasons, because we had 7 or 8 injuries. We went into an international break just hoping for no more. We then gained one for sure in Gabriel, and then we gained one potentially with Calafiori. But we were very much under the impression, which I think was more ourselves building this up as opposed to Arteta never truly said like everyone's back or anything. But we kind of talked ourselves into that everyone's going to come back and we're going to have a full French strength squad. Then when Gabriel got injured, we all panicked, but we went, but at least everyone's back. And as it got closer to the day, we started to realise, like, in media and stuff that Arsenal were putting out that we can't see some of these players that were supposed to be back. And then you start thinking, don't you need to be in training for 7 days or whatever it is? And then you think, oh, no one's coming back. We're going to be really light. And we're also panicking about the week ahead generally. Like, obviously step one's done with the Tottenham game. But we have Bayern Munich on Wednesday. We also have Chelsea away, and Chelsea are now second, I believe, in the league. So it was a big week, and we thought, how are Trossard, Mark Marino, and Saka going to, maybe they can get through Tottenham, but how are they going to manage 90 minutes 3 times this week? So we were just desperate for players to come back. And there was, there was leaked footage of the team getting out of the hotel for a morning walk the day of. I think Odegaard was spotted, Martinelli was spotted, Madueke was spotted, Calafiori was spotted. So it kind of put a lot of people at ease. And everyone started to think, oh, those 3 are definitely back. But we've heard Gyökeres actually is back. He just wasn't on the walk. And everyone was like, oh, we could be close to full strength minus Jesus, Havertz, and Jesus. And then so the team news comes. And I think naturally as an Arsenal fan, we're kind of a little pessimistic that, again, they've been out for a few weeks. They're not going to start these games, especially someone like Gyökeres, but we were dreaming of maybe having that threat to get through this week. And the team news comes out, and the 2 kind of talking points was Moreno was up front. There was no Gyökeres on the bench. Saka and Trossard as we expected. Zubimendi, Rice, and Eze as we expected. Timber was another slight doubt, but he was there. Saliba was there. Calafiori was there on the left side, and then Raya. And then it was who was going to replace Gabriel. Was it the left-footed Hincapié to make his Premier League debut, or was it going to be maybe Calafiori pushed in, Ben White, Timber pushed in, or Mosquera, who's done an amazing job this year, but mainly coming in for Saliba on that right side of the centre-backs. It ends up being Hincapié, which I think as far as, having a regen of Gabriel, it feels like we've gone and got that guy who's South American, that intense. I think the game plan he had, which I don't think anyone spoke about, was that he just man-marked Kudus. And I think we can all kind of agree that he was probably the only player there that we would probably be nervous of getting forward or getting on the ball. And I think they just gave him a job of, they've got one man up top. As long as you keep him quiet without the midfield having to deal with him, I don't think you need to have 3 across, 2 centre-backs at all times through the night. Because Hincapié was going up and following him up almost up to their 18-yard box. So that was a really good plan. It worked, and he did go off late on. It could just be a little bit of cramp because he hasn't played much. Mosquera came on late on for him. I think even Calafiori went off late, both limping a little bit, and then Lewis Skelly came on. I think in the post-match kind of celebrations, no one was really limping or anything like that. So it could have just been a little bit of cramp. But either way, that was the 11. But the positive signs were on the bench. We had Martinelli and Madueke, and it's mad that neither of them were going to start anyway, even if I think they were 2 weeks fit. If they'd played the last 2 games, I still don't think either of them would have started ahead of informed Trossard, informed Saka. But just having that on the bench just felt so much more reassuring than, the last couple of weeks, having Harin, Anus on the bench, Max Dowman, who we do want to see and we wish we had seen yesterday, but you do think, oh, okay, if we have to change the game at 60 minutes, we can't just rely on a 15-year-old. That just seems a little crazy. Same with Waneri. He's 18. We don't want to put that kind of pressure on them. So just having that extra firepower of Madueke and Martinelli just felt, that little bit more reassurance. And then afterwards, we've obviously heard since that Gyökeres is extremely close. Odegaard is extremely close. Gabriel's having a further scan, but it could be just weeks. He looked very healthy when he was on the pitch after the game and during it. But so in the next maybe 2 weeks, we could have Odegaard and Gyökeres back. Dare I say by Chelsea, I think both of them might be in the squad. I think Odegaard might be in the squad for Bayern Munich. There's a chance Gyökeres could be, but it does feel like they're extremely close. He kind of mentioned Havertz has had that setback. We weren't sure. Did that setback happen a month ago or did it happen now? He said he'll be there by the end of the year. I would have thought, by the sounds of it, Gabriel will be back by the end of the year. And Jesus will be back by the end of the year because he has been in training, but he needs some internal work as far as game match fitness. So we're getting close to a full strength squad by Christmas. But it's just whether we can, touch wood, keep hold of everyone currently. Because like I said, Capier kind of had a little limp. So did Calafiori. And earlier on in the match, we had a little scare with Trossard, who nearly had to go off when he went knee on knee with Polinia. Which was very similar to how Odegaard's kind of been missing this time, is that knee-on-knee kind of collision, which kind of stretched out some of the ligaments. But as far as the team, we were kind of accepting of that. I think we've all accepted, because there's a whole conversation needs to be happening around Moreno. I think he's a left 8 by trade. Who knows at this point? But he's played a lot of games at centre-forward. And when you look at the amount of goals he scored for club and country in the last year and a half, 2 years, and then you also look at the level in which he's doing it. I'm talking Champions League semi-finals, coming second in the Premier League last year, now top of the league. Again, he hasn't played a lot of games this season. It's only been in the last couple since Gyökeres got injured. But is there a conversation around, like, is he in the top 20 best centre-forwards in the world currently? And, I mean, he's fourth choice centre-forward for us. Like, when everyone's fit, it's Gyökeres, it's Havertz, it's Jesus, it's him. But for whatever reason, he gets a lot of game time. And you're starting to question then, I think with Moreno there's enough buzz around him now. He might be the best finisher at the club. And he holds the ball up. He drops into spaces to allow the wingers. There's a lot of teams that would really benefit from having him. And there's a lot of teams that would benefit from having Jesus. There's a lot of teams that would benefit from having Havertz. And I'm not mentioning Gyökeres because he's like the newest signing. But you start thinking, you don't need 4 centre-forwards. And you start thinking, could we get a bigger sum for Moreno to be a centre-forward somewhere? Because I'm sure, Valencia or someone would go, do you know what? This guy's our franchise. Because he's that good now. It's a really interesting turn of events, really, because it's kind of given us more options as far as transfer markets and things like that. Like, is he... I love Havertz. I think Havertz is a different level, but does it mean you can, get massive money for Kai Havertz when he's back? And you go, well, Moreno's going to do that job now. I mean, Jesus is the other one that plays a completely different style to almost all of our forwards. But I don't know, there's definitely a big conversation to have around Moreno. But that was the team that went out. We'd heard there was going to be a Tifu. We all had PTSD from Champions League last year of that kind of bed sheet that was half hanging on one edge of a cannon on just some red, material. But this was much better. It was a light show, fireworks. The Tifu went up. It had Sol Campbell at the top. It had, I think it was Odegaard, Gabriel, and Saka from the current generation. It had Thierry Henry. It had Tony Adams. I believe it had Rocastle. But it just kind of had, these streets are our own. I think it said underneath. North London forever played through the Tannoy. There was definitely, that was the atmosphere that they should have created for that Champions League that they got all wrong. And I'm hoping they've learned, and maybe this is their way forward. There is, I think the guys on pitch side, the non-Arsenal fans, were really laughing at this whole concept and how cringe and how all these things. But it's just odd to me that, if I watched Bayern Munich versus Dortmund and Dortmund had a Tifu like that and they were doing a light show, I would love that atmosphere. And then the crowd were that loud, it was like shaking the camera. That's the bit that I'm saying is like, it's almost like the residue of Banter FC or whatever they would, refer to Arsenal as, is like, oh, they're so cringe. It's like, but is it? Because it's a big derby. The point of all of this is to get your fans up for it. It's to get the players up for it. It's to have, entertainment or whatever it is. Isn't it kind of just good? And then to go on and win that derby, having done all that. Because again, if you do all that and then you lose, it's even worse. But to go out there and do that, I don't know. I think people are just getting too complex with their views or things like that, because I think in world football we like the concept of tifus and atmospheres and all these kind of things, and people think, oh, it's manufactured, man-made, like with the song, and the light show, whatever it is, forcing tifus that we've never have done, but it's just because Dortmund do them or whatever it is. But I think all these things have to start somewhere, and that's where we're at, and I think it's kind of grown. We wouldn't have done this 5 years ago, It feels like the right time to kind of bring things out, and they're not going to do it every week, but it felt like a big moment. It felt like a big game anyway, but it just added to it. The game started, and I think we had that chance as it kind of flicked over to Rice for that shot. The volley almost hit it too well. And then after that, I think you could kind of see the game plan, obviously, of the game. Tottenham did not want the ball. They were, if they want a foul outside their own box, they would send everyone up and the goalie would pump it, majority out for a goal kick for us. But they had no interest in playing it. They weren't really progressing up the field at all. We created that one chance, but other than that, I think we looked good, but I don't think we were really creating anything. It was kind of simmering, just a tad. And then it was actually Moreno dropping from that number 9 into midfield, getting that ball in the middle of the pitch. And then that little kind of dink over the top. We tried it a couple of times prior, so it's definitely something we've learned, maybe with a low block, that those are the kind of runs you have to do. And it reminds me, I remember Joe and I always talking about Barcelona back in the day, under Pep really. And when we play them in the Champions League, and it was just terrifying because you would sit on the edge of your own box. You'd have 10 men with a goalie, maybe 8 men, and then 2 men to kind of side to side just in front. And their whole team was up and penned you in. Their centre-backs were, only 10 yards out of your box. And you think, well, you can't really beat us here because you can cross it. We'll just keep, headering it out. You can shoot, but there's too many people in the way. It is pretty standard, part of the bus type football. But what they would do is they'd have they'd have their fullbacks, their wingers, and maybe their 2 8s. So all 3 of them on either side, like little red arrows, just running at different times. They'd all just keep making runs behind your defence, and it would dislodge the defence because obviously 1 or 2 of you would have to drop with them and then run back into shape. And then they'd make 4 or 5 of these runs, and they wouldn't actually pick them out. And then one of them they'd pick out, and all of a sudden, Messi or someone is beyond your defence, and he's hitting it back across goal with now the other 6 players running on beyond your defenders. And it was just impossible to defend. And it felt like that because Trossard had kind of been coming in, I think, at the end of last year, and some of this year we've seen Martinelli and Saka doing that kind of diagonal, almost like NFL slants. And Moreno picks him out. He makes a really good touch. I thought he was going to flick it back to Saka for the easy tap in, and he gets a bit of luck off of Van der Ven, I think, and it goes into the far corner. But I think when you're the aggressors, those things do start to fall your way. And I think, like I was saying earlier, I think when things start to turn, even stuff like that goes your way. When you think of last season against PSG, the amount of chances we missed by, an inch, or it deflected just wide, but then Dembele was, volleying it from the edge of the 18-yard box, and it somehow goes through 9 players and into the corner. Sometimes things are just going that way, it goes that way, and I think that was a perfect example of that. And then not too long after that, a really nice interplay on the outside, cut in. Rice does a really good thing of just first time getting out to Eze, and then you just think and shoot. And I think all week we were kind of hoping, and I said it on the Patreon this week, Eze's going to be the guy. It has to be. The story is written. Who's Eze from Thomas Frank? Turning them down in the summer. The modern day Sol Campbell. All these things. You knew he had to eventually get a goal, or something was going to happen with him that day. And he'd been really quiet up to that point. And he gets a shot away, and I think it deflects again. And this is the point where I want to chat. This is kind of basically that goes into half time. The goal he scores there should be given offside. There are 3 of our players, or I think 3, in the goalie's eye line. I'm very happy they didn't give it. But this is the exact thing that I want to talk about with, the world turning a little bit, is this time last year, or the last 3 years, we've gone on this podcast, or Arsenal fans in general, come on and gone, the exact phrase I always use is, 3 dogs in a row. We go, there's 3 dogs. Howard Webb comes out and goes, it's 3 cats. And we all go, no, it's 3 dogs. We can all see that. And then everyone laughs and goes, no, it's all 3 cats. But we all can all see it's 3 dogs. And that's how insane you feel, because you're thinking, you're just lying. Like there's no truth to this. And just say it's wrong or something. And the problem is with Arsenal as well, is that kind of having not won anything and being the team that kind of gets picked on or whatever. I think even Micah Richards said, when it's Arsenal, everyone piles on. George Graham said it back, it's in our DNA to be hated. there is something to it because the last few years, we would watch, Rice knock the ball away and get a red card, and then 30 seconds later, their player would do it on a booking, and it would even worse, belt it into the crowd well after the whistle. Nope. In the Man City game, two of their players do it on bookings, then Trossard does it, and they're like, yep, red. And we're sitting there going, wait a sec, what? And Arteta said after, he said, I don't mind them getting reds. But why are they not getting reds? And then everyone laughs and says, well, no, it's different, isn't it? We go, well, no, it's not. Could you explain it? No one can explain it. And you start to feel a little kind of crazy because it's like, it snowballs, the media go with it, the refs go with it, the fans go with it, everything goes with it. And you can't stop that ball rolling. And I remember I said it a couple of years ago when Arteta called out the refs, Disgracia, the Newcastle game. They did not like that. And from that moment, we got only the worst. If there was 50-50 on like whether that should be sent off or not for us, we would get the bad end of the stick always. And then last year, I remember Unai Emery did something, and I said, that's going to take the heat off of us. And it kind of has. It felt like it did. And not that I early on in the season, Villa got a lot of bad decisions. They didn't score till week 5, didn't get a win till week 6. They're doing much better now. But a lot of that was due to very weird decisions happening. And you think, oh, okay, that's their new kind of go-to as they're going after Emery. And with those decisions, you look at Liverpool against City. They scored a goal. We talked about it on the podcast on the main feed on iTunes and Spotify. The way in which he headers that, it's going in anyway. Robertson ducks so that he doesn't get involved. The ruling is that if he actively makes a play for the ball, which he definitely doesn't, but they remove the goal. I think City are going to go and win that game comfortably, whatever. But still, that momentum in games do change things. Then a week later, Liverpool concede a goal against Newcastle, where one of their players is against Nottingham Forest. One of their players is in the view of goalie. They give them the goal. And this is what I was saying as an Arsenal fan the last couple of years. We kept saying, but if there's like a 50-50 chance that you're going to get this wrong, why do we always end up on the wrong one? I remember we talked about on here, that Newcastle goal. They said, well, if the ref had blown up, we wouldn't have been able to overturn it. It was not a goal. But he didn't blow up. He allowed it to go to VAR, and they said there's not enough to overturn. Then a week later, we score a late winner, but he blows the whistle as it goes over the line. Therefore, it's not enough to overturn the other way. So we're always on the wrong end of the kind of the graph in which, what can be overturned, what can't be overturned. And they always make it so that we would always be on that wrong end. Liverpool right now are in that exact moment we were in the last couple of years because it was right in front of us. We all saw it in the City game. We all saw it in the Forest game. And then we see it even further in the people they're in a title race with this year. I don't know if Liverpool in a title race, but there's a long season ahead. But we also get the good decision, the rubber to green. But they're getting the complete opposite. And that is why we felt crazy the last couple of years. Because then they go on TV and they go, nah, it's fine. The only benefit for Liverpool is they are not the banter team, and everyone's kind of agreeing and going, yeah, they're getting hard done by. It's like, if you think that's hard done by, go watch the last few years of Arsenal without any background sound and just go, what is happening? And that's how we feel. But the benefit is, once it starts going that way, they're not spending an hour after that game talking about how it was offside. They went, yeah, I think it should be offside because based on the Liverpool goal, all this kind of stuff. And they go, but it doesn't change anything. And you're like, okay. So if you outperform the bad decisions, no one really talks about it. And that's a huge, huge benefit to us because now there's not a 2-hour segment with Gary Neville talking about, yeah, but that would have changed the game. Then Arteta has to be asked about it all week in the press conference. And then the players start, being cagey. The refs have all watched that and thought, yeah, if they do get a weird decision, I'm not going to allow them to have it because they've already got given a nice one. There's no conversation. Therefore, that game's done. All people know is we won comfortably. Nothing else. Whereas Liverpool, everyone's thinking, spent $500 million they've lost. Is the manager good enough? The decisions are not going their way. And all of a sudden that piles on, that snowballs. And therefore, next few games, they're going to get weird decisions. They're going to get all these things. They want to pile that pressure onto Slot because it's good TV. And that's just my kind of opinion on that. And I do feel like it's turned, even in little things. I noticed, for example, on pitch side, there was a joke being, I think it was Lewis on there, kept making a joke about they can only score from a set piece, and there's things online where they say things like their whole game plan is to get down the sides and try and win corners so they can score goals, which is just so nonsense if you've watched Arsenal. And before, people were going to go in with that and they were even making it to mainstream media, whereas now I've noticed people kind of going, I think you all just got to realise that. I know we don't like Arsenal, but I mean, they're just really good. And that's kind of that little response now. You go, oh, okay, that's snowballing. And even on the over, is it the overlap, the one where they have brunch? I always don't know the name. When it's like Carragher and all that. And he has not been there since Liverpool started losing, but he was back this week. And they were predicting the Arsenal game. And all the teams, obviously, like Wright did that really amazing speech. We'll talk about that on the main feed about Bellingham. But Roy, Keane, and Wright were pretty much like, Arsenal 3-1, something like that, maybe 2-0. And then Carragher in the background just says, without Gabriel, how are they going to score? No one laughs, everyone just carries on. They carry on, and then Neville's like, what are we going to go for? And he goes, you actually think they could score 2 without a set piece? And no one laughs, they also move on. And he does it like 3 more times. He keeps trying to make this joke. They can't score. So he's like, well, how are they going to score? And I think Wright says, no, we'll score all our goals from open play this week just to save a couple set pieces for the week after. And he was exactly right, because that kind of, they're not jumping on that joke anymore. It's like, I think that's just old hat. Like, you're kind of sat in the pot, like, no, that is really good. And that's huge for us, because that's going to help our momentum. And the second half starts within 30 seconds as an unbelievable finish on his left foot. Makes it 3-0. Feels very much like game over. But then Zubimendi loses the ball, very similar to that North London derby in China, I think it was, or Singapore, where Lewis Skelly got dispossessed. And I can't remember who scored it for Tottenham then. But Richarlison scores one of the most amazing goals, because he gets dispossessed. That was on, I think the mistake, only person you can blame in this whole thing is Zubimendi. He didn't get the ball. He could have. The reason Ray is out there is so that he has an easy pass back to him, so we can carry on moving. There's even a pass to Saliba right in front of him. He's just kind of dallying on it. I think Paulinho wins the ball, and then first time Richarlison from between the halfway line and the 18-yard box, and he couldn't have put it, postage stamp perfect. If it's any looser, like shorter, Ray just catches it or makes a good save. If it's any further, it's hitting the bar or it's going wide or whatever it is. It is right in the top corner. It's the only place he could not physically get to. And it goes in. And at that point, I must admit, I had that horrible feeling of, I know what's coming. We're going to sit back eventually and go, the game's won. But if you remember that game at Tottenham a couple of years ago, we won 3-2. I think we were up by 3. And then I think it was a rare mistake, then a penalty. And then that last 10 minutes was horrific. And I thought, at 3-1, even though it's secure, all it takes is them to score on the 90th minute. It's 3-2. Then you're having the worst 6-7 minutes of your life watching this last bit. And at that point, we brought on another couple of defenders to try and see it out, and you never know what could happen. So there was a little bit of nerves, but they had pushed on so far, it felt like a basketball game. It felt like someone was going to get a goal. Luckily, Trossard, who had been unbelievable the whole game, picks that ball up, knocks it across, and Eza, just in the form of his life, the guy slides past him, just puts it in the far corner, and that's a hat-trick. The first time since, I want to say 1974. It might be 79. I could be wrong on that exact stat. But it's a very long time. And you couldn't write it. I mean, the whole premise of Eza joining us was let it all work out. It's a full circle moment. He was at Arsenal. He's a boyhood fan. Whole family is Arsenal fans. They have to move away from that dream. Go around the houses a little bit. End up back there. It all feels a bit like a fever dream, because the fact he actually rang the manager and said, please sign me, instead of the team, the opposite, the actual enemy of the team he supported when he was growing up and still supports, ends up then going to them and then getting a hat-trick against that team. It's just honestly bizarre. But he gets it. A couple of celebrations were pretty good, like the laughing one and the making fun of Richarlison to take off his shirt or not. There was some really good stuff, and beyond that point, the game was done. And there was a couple moments, a bit of Ronaldinho, like where he kind of just rolled the ball under his foot and like turned a couple of people, kind of rolled a couple of people, and he was walking, and you could see them getting wound up. And it almost takes a game like that to make someone see their full potential. And I thought he was non-existent in that first half till he got his goal, but then he just could not find space. I mean, he was almost the number 9. And it's just no mean feat. I mean, like Thierry, he scored 5 goals in, I think it was 11 North London derbies. Eza's played 1 and scored 3. It's very historic, It's very rare to score in North London derby. It's even more to score 2. It's very rare, if ever, other than a couple of times, to ever get a hat-trick. And he's done it. And considering the story in the summer, that is bizarre. And I mean, afterwards, I'm not a religious person, but he said, I prayed for it. God made this happen. So you're just like, well, I don't know at this point, because we joke about Jurrien Timber being you know, Reverend Timber at Arsenal, and he kind of it feels like we got someone on our side, and like Ian Wright's doing it, they're doing it, they're all agreeing on it, and you're just thinking, well, and it's all going really well, and you're thinking, at this point, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe we have got this really amazing like presence. I don't know. Like it's so confusing, but it's unbelievable. And I mean, after a North London derby win, it's good, but to do it like that, I mean, the Tottenham fans. I've seen some of the reaction videos of those brothers and even what's his name? Completely blanking my mind. Oh, I can't remember his name. Oh, that's gonna bother me. The Tottenham creator does like almost like freestyle like bits. What's his name? But that guy, they've lost. Because if you think about it, if someone turned us down to join them, and then they did that to us and scored a hat-trick, you don't know how you would even like look on the online. So I couldn't imagine how they're feeling. But it is so wild. I want to take it in bench cam, Gunners or Us cam, Gunnosaurus cam, highlights, Google Pixel, God knows what they shot it on. Frimmy talking about it, I don't know. Just give me all the content because it's such an unbelievable win. It was the perfect weekend. If Carlsberg did weekends, it's that. And I mean, City loss, Liverpool loss, us win the North London derby. It's so big because it just immediately takes that pressure off the next weekend, even though, we're looking at Chelsea, who have just appeared up that league from out of nowhere. But looking back at that Tottenham game at the end of it, we had 17 shots to their 3. We had 8 on target to their 2. We had 57% possession. We had 150 more passes. Pass accuracy was exactly the same. Fouls, they had 15 to our 11. Yellow cards, they had 3 to our 1. Corners, we had 4 to 1. It's just, I don't know. It's mad. And yeah, we're playing Chelsea next week. Chelsea have lost 3, drawn 2, won 7, which is a very good record. And they're quietly getting on with it without Cole Palmer. And I think the Maresca kind of saying, imagine Haaland or Salah. It's like, you've spent so much money for that depth. Like, we're not allowed to complain about missing 7 forwards for the last 3 or 4 weeks. I don't think you complain about missing one number 10 who had scored like 1 open play goal since Jan anyway. But I think he's unbelievable. But I think, they are doing very well. But it's kind of where they should be, considering what they've been doing, what they've been spending. It's about time. When you actually look at the squad, they don't look like a threat, but they very much could be a threat. City are right there with them. They're City on 22, Villa on 21, by the way. Crystal Palace are on 20. Man City 22, Chelsea 23, and us 29. So with 6 points clear. The only things that can change tonight is if Everton win, they would leapfrog potentially Tottenham. They can't leapfrog Tottenham unless they win 8-0. They could leapfrog Liverpool and Man United into 10th, which is mad. But if Man United were to win, they would also go to 21 points. And they would go 4th. Man United would go 4th, 1 point behind Man City. So it's a huge game for Man United tonight. The Chelsea one is, really interesting. They won 3, lost 1, won another one. And Arsenal 1-3, drawn 1-1-1. City have lost 2 in the last 5. As far as form goes, it's such an interesting game, but it just takes that sledge. There's a 6-point gap. We've got Brentford in the week after. Whereas when you look at Chelsea, they've got Barcelona this week. A slightly longer week than us. We were on Wednesday, they're on Tuesday. But they got us, then they're away at Leeds in midweek, and then away at Bournemouth. So it's I wouldn't like that schedule. I mean, our schedule's rough anyway, but I wouldn't want that, 2 away games after, they've got Barcelona and us, then a couple awkward away ties. Whereas City are, having lost that, they are home to Leverkusen and home to Leeds, but then midweek they go away to Fulham. And then the following weekend they have Sunderland, but it's at home. So I do think City win 3 out of the next 3 in the league, whereas with us, I'm not so sure. Having got through this, need to get through Bayern Munich. I don't know if we can get 3 from 3, because our next 3 would be Chelsea away, Brentford at home, Villa away. And I mean, Villa are 4th, Chelsea are 2nd. Brentford are about mid-table-ish. You just worry about it. After that, we've got Wolves, and then we're away to Everton. But it does. It just looks a bit dicey, but um, only time will tell. But I think for now, you just got to kind of almost bask in that win and take in all the content you can, because you won't get many better days than that. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. We'll be back on Wednesday with our usual show on iTunes and Spotify. Give us a 5-star review, Gunners are us. But I'll also have another Patreon before Wednesday with a preview for Bayern Munich here on the Patreon. I will see you next week. Bye bye.